Welcome to the Organizedpreneur Podcast, the ultimate podcast for female entrepreneurs looking to supercharge their business. I'm Eldrima Harper, host of the Organizedpreneur Podcast. I'm also a business organizing strategist and coach, where I specialize in helping solopreneurs, freelance professionals, and service-based providers. This is to ignite, build, and transform your business dreams into reality. If you're feeling overwhelmed, struggling to manage clients and tasks, and worried about things slipping through the cracks, you're in the right place. With my signature framework, not only are you able to get your time back and get on track, but also turn your passion and hard work into a sustainable and profitable venture. In fact, my most recent client launched a six-figure business in less than a year. And that's because I bring clarity, focus, and a proven roadmap to help you unlock your true potential. And this starts with the 3 pillars of efficiency. Number 1, organize your mental, physical, and digital space for success. Number 2, optimize your time for clarity and effectiveness. And then number 3, systemize your operations for sustainability. With those 3 pillars, you can now monetize and turn your passion and hard work into a sustainable and profitable venture. All right, everyone, welcome to the Organizedpreneur Podcast. This is the ultimate podcast for female entrepreneurs looking to supercharge their life and their business. I'm your host, Eldrima Harper. I'm also a business organizing strategist and coach, and I am super excited about today because I get to talk to my friend Maz, who is joining me all the way from the UK. And so I am very, very excited about this because she traveled virtually from afar. So I'm super excited about talking to Maz today. And because she is a well-being coach and speaker. And so I've known Maz we met virtually. And so, cause she's been attending our networking events. So I feel like I really, know her very well. Like if I saw her on the street, I'd be like, hey, Maz. And so, but I'm very excited. Thank you so much for joining me today, Maz. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. I do you know what? I really appreciate this opportunity, and I am still in awe. I think it's amazing that we can do this. Who would have known a few years ago that I'm here in London connecting with you, across the pond. So yeah, it's the power of technology, and yeah, it's amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you, taking time out of your day and preparing, as we've already talked about our preparation process for the show. So Maz, for the sake of the listeners who may not know you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and just share a little bit about what you do?
Okay, so I essentially wear many hats, but in terms of business, I am a mental well-being coach. So that's my business. I also I'm a qualified adult social worker, so that's where that came from. And I provide services mainly via one-to-one coaching and also sometimes group coaching for professional women primarily, although I have many different clients, but professional women who are typically in a caregiving capacity. So they may be nurses, sometimes they may even be stay-at-home moms, or more recently, I've had some ministers of religion. So if you're giving care in any capacity, that is what I help them to maintain their well-being and get the self-care that they need. So some other just more personal things that, I, as you said, I'm based in the UK. I tend to work virtually, and the pandemic was good for that because that's when the business was birthed. And I'm also a mother, a mother to a teenage girl who's driving me crazy at the moment. And I wear many other hats. I'm also a comedian. I do lots of other things that help me to create the holistic lifestyle that I desire.
I love it. Thank you so much. Maz, I don't think I knew that you were a mother. I don't think we've ever talked about that on the at the networking event.
Yeah, I think maybe we tend to, well, I tend to compartmentalize. So yeah, when we're in the business network, it just
That's true.
never seems to come up, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my escape. I'm
Yeah.
trying to forget her. Yeah, you know how those teenage girls is our dreamer. They be causing stress and things. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah. I didn't know that when you said that. I was like, I don't think we've ever talked about that as many times as we, just kind of hung out even after, the networking event. But awesome.
Yes.
So teenager, huh?
Yeah.
I bet that's a nice challenge.
It's a challenge for my own mental well-being. Yes, it is. Yes, indeed.
Oh my goodness. So you've already described primarily, the type of clients that you work with. So, I mean, and I know I've actually been a caregiver. I'm not a caregiver now, but I know a lot of caregivers. What are some of the things that you see that they struggle with?
Yeah, there's so many, but it tends to be, and a lot of my clients, I forgot to say, they're Christian
Yes.
women,
Hmm.
and so there are certain nuances but generally, what I see is, yeah, a lack of um, boundaries is the primary thing. Hence, that can lead to burnout. I see,
Hmm.
well, in the before I see that initially, you know, when you do consultancy and coaching, Aldrima, so you know when
Hmm.
someone comes to you with the problem is not often what the problem is. It's a symptom of a deeper thing. So
Hmm.
usually you spend the first few session and they're going round. I'm like, no, really, what is it? So
Hmm.
the root that I can see, especially for us women of faith,
Hmm.
women of minority backgrounds, is
Hmm.
this avoidance and
Yeah.
denial sometimes.
Ooh.
So yeah, it's prevalent, and I'm like, what? Why do we do this? Why do we punish ourselves? It's like a form of self-flagellation. It's like it's almost as if we think we have to suffer because that is the path. So we are self-sacrificing naturally as
Yes.
women. So of course, whether you're a mother or not, we put people before us. Whether we have people round to our homes, we're cooking, running around, and that has its place. But often, what happens with the women I see, it comes at the expense of their own. And I say mental health primarily, physical health as well, and financial that can affect it. But it starts in the mind, and yeah, it's really it's not a good thing to see. So in
Yeah.
terms of our mental health, just to clarify the context,
Hmm.
I'm not talking about mental illness. So people, when I say that, people say, well, I'm not mentally ill. No, what I'm saying is that we all have mental health, just like you have physical health. Sometimes
Hmm.
you might have flu, Aldrima.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean you're defective just because you're having an off day or whatever. You
Right.
need time to restore your health. So similarly with our minds, which is the
Hmm.
one we neglect, especially as Christian women, by the way.
Yeah.
Christian women are notorious for this in terms of denying, because we spiritualize everything. We say we just pray it away. I just pray. I was like, that's good, but if you had a broken leg or you have diabetes, are you just gonna pray and not take your medication? You're not gonna go and see the doctor. So we
Hmm.
need to learn to take appropriate action, just like we do with our cars. You don't let
Yeah.
the car run out of gas or oil or whatever. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, you described so many things that I've seen, and even as I said, I had been a caregiver. I was a caregiver at a very early age. My parents who raised me, like about in junior high, I began being a caregiver, and so I didn't really know how, how to work boundaries, work that out. I didn't know what were safe boundaries. I didn't even understand, any of that. In fact, I'm just learning, maybe in the past 5 or 6 years, how to have healthy boundaries. And but you're so right about, sacrificing so much of your life, and a lot of times being made to feel guilty if you don't.
Yes.
I mean, and it's like, and I don't know, and here recently, like, my niece is she just recently, well, she's not a caregiver anymore because my sister passed away, which is, her mother, back about 3 months ago. And but she had been a caregiver since she was like 19, and she was a caregiver for her mother, her grandmother, her great grandmother. And I mean, it was like, when she and I talked about it, it was like 4 people she had been a caregiver for.
Mm.
And so she's just finding herself. She's got, children and things like that, but she's just kind of finding herself. And it's a huge adjustment in terms of, particularly if you have done it for a long time and your identity is wrapped up in doing that. Do you find that to be a lot of the case?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
so much. Even for myself, and that's why I recognize it. And if that's all you've ever known, and that's what's expected, then that's what you do. We
yeah,
carry on certain traditions. My family are from we're from the Caribbean. I have Jamaican parents, and that is sometimes. And I know you talked previously on other podcasts about legacies and things, and some of the legacies that are left for us are not healthy ones. So it's again tied up in this notion of, well, we had to suffer, therefore you suffer. And it's just what
yeah,
we do. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. Of course, you should look after your loved ones. Yes, that's what we do. But there's something about um, martyrdom. It's
yes,
almost like, because if you're going to do it, have you noticed whenever we do something against our will, and it might be the right thing to do, but you can get resentful because it's wearing on you. You're
yeah,
tired. You want to do other things. So
yeah,
and that's what happens. You maybe you can't delegate.
yeah,
So that's what I do see, that, as I say, it's a prevalence. I don't know about other communities, but what I can tell you in terms of our those of us from the African diaspora
yes,
is that we this is something that, and I've tried to pray about this and wonder, what is it about us that keeps us with these ingrained shackles?
yes,
Because
yes,
sometimes it can be like a modern day slavery that we just perpetuate. And um and, and and some of it does come from old colonial legacies, but I think that we are hardworking, we do all of that, and it's almost as if we do not have. Okay, I'll tell you what my some of my clients have said to me initially, because not everybody knows what coaching is.
yeah,
And they say, "Are you my therapist?" I'm like, "No, that's not what I do." And I explain to them, and they're like, "Well, anyway, that is for only certain people. That's for wealthy white people," they'll say. Or
mm-hmm,
I'm like, "Well, everybody needs help. Are you going to just suffer because you think that's for a certain type of people?" And then there's the notion of the strong Black woman, because they feel that they have to be strong. And being
yes,
strong, I'd like to, their definition is different from mine, but because being strong for me involves seeking the help. I've got no shame, so it really
right,
helps me. I've got no shame, no pride, so I'll go and beg anybody anything that I need, because I'm not
yes,
going to starve or die because
right,
because I'm too embarrassed to know. And
mm-hmm,
also a similar parallel, Aldrima, that I've noticed in the Christian community. So, for example, if you ask for help, it's seen, and this is why I was even surprised when the pastor came to me. I was like, "I need you, I need deliverance." But I get what she was saying, and it's this notion of, if I dare to step out and ask or anything, people see me as weak, or I don't have enough faith, and it
mm-hmm,
looks embarrassing. So
mm-hmm.
that's what I'm seeing a lot of. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even, like I was saying, even in my own family, And again, growing up being a caregiver up until like my 30s, I think. Yeah, it was like about in my 30s, and my identity being wrapped up in, doing that. And I was honestly, I was lost, after I was no longer in that, in that capacity, But you are so right. And then it's funny you said that about, people of faith. Love my people of faith, but oh my gosh, we got a lot of we got a long way to go. And I have heard, people, well, you need to be, that was your mother, or that was your, that person raised you, and this, that, and going on. And then you start to feel guilty if you try to seek refuge, if you like, you want, like, I need a break, the responsibility of caring for someone, it's huge. And it is almost viewed as though you don't love the person if you
Right.
if you seek refuge. Kind of speak to
Yeah.
that a little bit. Did you want to say something about that? I mean, have you seen that as well?
I've seen it, and that's why people come to me. I also work for an organization and do separate Christian coaching. That's aside
Mm-hmm.
from my own, but people come on there anonymously. And I always say, have you
Mm-hmm.
spoken to your pastor about this? They're like, no, I couldn't possibly. Because people, this is the thing about shame. It
Yes.
literally can hinder every aspect of your life. And if we are creating, and that's part of the reason I come to your group, we need those safe, supportive
Yeah.
environments, because we're doing, especially doing this business journey, where
Mm-hmm.
we can feel alone, we can feel isolated. There are certain expectation and standards that we are expected to fulfill. But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of and it's even worse in the church, in or
Mm-hmm.
for other people of faith, especially because there's these unwritten rules, these implicit kind of suggestions that you need to, they're giving you advice that actually they wouldn't follow, by the way, and it's not biblical, secondly. And it kills people. It can literally kill people, Aldrima, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
an exaggeration to say that. So I'm talking about people, who have been, that's your husband, but husband's beating up on you. He almost
Mm-hmm.
killed you the
Mm-hmm.
other time. Why are you telling
Mm-hmm.
people to stay with what? And they
Right.
never kind of speak to the man. They're just saying, you as the woman, you've got to submit, you've got to be, or in the case of, like you said, your mother, people have to realize that not everybody's mother or father are good individuals. And I know it says
Mm-hmm.
honor your mother and father, but some people have toxic, and some people's families are so self-destructive that that's their mission, to destroy you. So we have to
Yes.
acknowledge when we're in the midst of narcissists or addicts or other people who are going to steal our energy and put us in a position where we cannot operate in our business, in our lives, and we can't look after our kids because we are wrapped up. So it's dangerous. It's not just a nice thing to do. And I had to learn this because I guess what that's probably why I'm the black sheep of the family. But I had to learn to be uncomfortable with their, kind of whispers and, oh gosh, she's doing this, and all the accusations that come with it. Because
Mm-hmm.
my whole business is founded upon the scripture, and
Mm-hmm.
it's about where is it, in John 3, the 3 John 1 2, um
Mm-hmm.
about pray, when he's praying that we should have health, that we may
Mm-hmm.
prosper and enjoy good health as your
Yeah.
soul prospers.
Yes.
That
Yes.
that's the plan.
Yeah.
Because if we
Yes.
don't, we know that our health is our wealth, and if we don't have it, we are effectively, we shouldn't ask people to be martyrs in that sense.
Right.
We shouldn't, because it's not productive. It's not
Right. Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
So let's not be martyrs, please.
Yeah. Let's not be martyrs. Yes, exactly. I mean, oh my gosh, you have hit on so many things. And as I think about, people that I know, that, that's gone through that, and that, maybe going through it currently, if they're listening to this podcast, I pray that they really, heed to what you're saying, because it's so, like you said, it's so ingrained in us, as women, as Black women, as faith, women of faith. So many things are ingrained in us, and when we try to, and I heard what you just said, kind of overlook the whispers, and even sometimes it's not even the people that's whispering, it's the whispers that you hear that you think that
Right.
they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
True. That's
know
true.
and so, because you already know how they think about that, and so it's like they're, I know that that's probably what they're saying, because that's, what their attitude is, already, so it's really hard to process all of that. It just really brings on another level of stress if you really think about it, because I remember, so, when I was just sharing with you, I was a caregiver to my adoptive parents, and then but my biological mother, whom she did not raise me, but she recently passed. I was telling you about my niece. That's who my niece was taking care of. So one of the struggles that I was having was that, because I always felt like, people were saying, well, my gosh, why, that's your mother, why aren't you doing this? Why is it that your niece is doing this? Well, for one, she raised my niece, and my niece had the capacity to do it, right?
Mm,
And
yeah.
so, she comes from a nursing background. She's, there's a lot of gifting in her that over the years, she's developed, and she had the capacity to do it. And then the other thing was that, like you were saying, some of the toxic, relationships,
Mm,
was that, you know in my mother's case, she had experienced a lot of abuse, so she was passing that on, right? And so in our relationship, I didn't know we were going to go here. I guess that's why you're the coach, and the it's like, okay, I feel comfortable talking to you about this. But, a lot of that, when those things are passed on, and we had to actually deal with that, which we had not ever dealt with it before. My mother and I's relationship, we hadn't dealt with that before. So during the time as her health began to decline, and she needed, more care and things like that. And so, we had a conversation. I was like, I love you, but I'm not going to let you talk to me that way. This is, this is not how I want us to engage.
right.
We can do better than this. And so from that point on, it got better. Now she still talked to my other siblings the way, but that was because they didn't address it, but I did, because my adoptive parents who raised me, I wasn't used to that. They didn't talk that way, to me. It was a very loving and caring, and it's not that my mother didn't care, but she there was a lot of things that she did not know. And I think it's the responsibility of the person who's the receiver of those toxic kind of habits to say, okay, I get that, this is how you handled, whatever it is, you've talked to whoever it is, this is how you've been doing life, right? But from this point on, if we're to have a healthy relationship, we're going to have to establish some boundaries. We're going to have a come to Jesus conversation. And it doesn't have to be ugly either, And so we did, and we were able to, come to an agreement in terms of how we were going to engage with each other. Because the thing that I learned was that, just because a person didn't know how to do better, or they were in a certain environment, does not give them permission to do that to me.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what
Yeah.
I had to come to. And when I was freed up, you know, to when I was able to express that, to her, because I know she loved me. That wasn't the issue. But her hurt was being, poured out on me, and I was like, no, we're not gonna do it this way. And so yeah, so it was yeah. I mean, I can so identify with so many things that you're saying. Did you have anything to add to that? Have you, experienced, some of those things too?
Oh yeah, and that's exactly. I mean, I only talk about what I know about, and I've experienced it firsthand. And
Mm,
before I even was a coach, so I trained 16 years ago now as a social worker. So I always knew I wanted to work in mental health
mm,
services. And I quite like it because I was always fascinated. And I remember even my mother was a nurse, psychiatric nurse, and in those days
mm.
they had asylums where even if you didn't have a mental illness, they put you in there. If you were a deviant, if you were an unwed mother, they just put every everyone that society didn't want, they
Yes.
put them. And I remember being a child fascinated. I was like, you know what, one day I'm gonna free them. I said, I'm gonna let these people out. And I was on a mission to do that. But yeah, but the point that you raised was so poignant, because you're and even with your business, Aldrima, this is what you're trend setting. You are breaking generational, whatever you want to call them, curses, patterns, what have
Yes.
you. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And whenever you try and step out from those kind of traditions, there's always a lot of resistance and what have you.
Mhm,
And I'm glad that you could find that that understanding with your mother, because it's
mhm.
like you say, those, when we know better, we have to do better. And
Absolutely.
it's good. But I also appreciate that not everyone can establish those kind of boundaries with their families and what have you. And
Yeah.
it's this, yeah. So it's as long as society will always tell you. You were mentioning before that your niece was helping, and actually it's like it's nobody's business. Why they asking you why you not mind your business? Because you know what's best, and
Yeah.
there's a reason for everything.
Yeah.
I never, I mean, even if you didn't have that good relationship, if you came to me or anyone said, well, I don't see my mom, or I don't have contact with my father, or
Mhm.
whatever, there's a reason, there's something, whether your
Absolutely.
perception is wrong or not. If I
Yeah.
tell you, oh, I'll dream it, if I shame you into it,
Mhm.
it's not going to be a healthy outcome for anyone. You're just going to hide
Mhm.
your behavior. You're going to be sneaking around. So I
So
don't
true.
believe in that. But we have to stop. Yeah, because even in the church, like I said, the scriptures that are used to get honor your mother and father. But what does that look like? Does that mean I'm going to continue to be abused? To submit to your
Right.
husband, okay, so he can push me down the stairs?
Right.
What does it actually mean when we say these things? And let's not misinterpret the
Yeah.
meaning, because we are not. Um, and there's abuse that goes on in the church as well. Spiritual. I'm
Yes.
not talking about general church hurt,
Right. Right. Right.
where like Sister Beverly took your pot and she didn't give
Right.
it back. I'm talking
Right.
about
Yeah.
proper abuse, where the
Yeah.
pastor be using scriptures to try and sleep with you, or
Yes.
he's trying to get you all your money. You know those
Yeah.
ones, and this is more prevalent. And because, as the scripture says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So
Yeah.
we do need to be educated. And I'm surprised, even when I go into churches and various places talking about this, especially this general issue about our well-being,
Mhm.
people are still like, oh, what? And I'm like, isn't this common knowledge? You didn't know that? You didn't know that this is wrong and this
Yeah.
is, you know?
Yeah.
But that they obviously don't. So that is why people continue to act. And just a final thing that I'd say about that, for those of us in business. So
Mhm.
when we think about our mental health and well-being and our spiritual well-being, it's the very traits we have, our dreamer. So some of us, not me, I'm not perfectionist.
Well,
I'm
of
like, oh,
course.
that will do. Yeah, yeah. But some of us have traits like we are creatives. We
Yeah.
might be really passionate about stuff. We have great leadership skills. We're high
Yeah.
achievers. And it's
Mm-hmm.
those very skills that make us susceptible to poor mental health and well-being.
Yeah.
Because when in the beginning stage, you're just starting the business, and we're living in a society anyway that promotes that hustle culture. So
Mm-hmm.
we feel the need. We push ourselves, and I'm not saying that's wrong. There's a place for that, but
Mm-hmm.
not when you're compromising your own health. When you are verging on burnout, as you
Mm-hmm.
know, you cannot pour from an empty vessel. So we
Yes.
have to be careful. And that's why I keep saying everything starts in the mind. We
Yeah.
have to be aware of like you said, it's a mindset thing. Your
Mm-hmm.
body actually will even tell you, give you signal when you're pushing yourself too hard, or you know, your body's telling you.
Mm-hmm.
It's telling
Yes.
you. And if you can't function, how are you going to run a business if you laid up in bed because you're severely depressed, or your just body is fatigued?
Yeah.
And it didn't need to be that way, because if you were more aware, you could have managed that. You could have managed the resources that you had. So
Yes.
that's all. It's just about awareness, really.
Yeah. So you said that, so you speak at different churches and things like that too?
Yeah, occasionally, not to
Occasionally.
they don't invite me back after a while.
That was my
But
next question.
no, just I mean, not necessarily on a professional, but just like when it's mental health awareness, or if they always get me, if there's someone who they think is bizarre or deviant, it's like, oh, Maz, can you speak to them? I'm like, why me? Why I gotta go and speak to them? But yeah, and it's because people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They feel it's still taboo, and they're like, oh gosh, she's a bit, so
Hmm.
yeah, all of that stuff that
Yeah.
goes on.
Have you found that once since COVID that this, mental wellness, mental well-being became a little bit more prevalent? Have you found that to have been the case, or not?
I'll tell you the truth. It's been happening for for decades and
Yeah.
decades. We're just taking notice now. It's a trending
Yeah.
topic. We got people like Prince Harry today, and it's almost become a badge of honor with some people. So, some people want to come in. Oh yeah, So you hear people say, "I'm a bit bipolar." I'm like, no, you're not. Stop saying that.
Yeah.
People just because it's fashionable. But for many years we've been struggling with when we think about during the war, our armed forces.
Yeah.
How many of them came back? When you go through
Yes.
certain types of trauma, and
Yes.
it's like,
Yes.
what's that saying? What unresolved trauma? Yeah, what is not solved gets transferred. I've forgotten who says that, but it's
Hmm.
true, and it speaks to the
Yeah.
generational patterns, because we know that it's things like, even me growing up in the Jamaican household, even living out there in Jamaica as a child, it was very much a case of, and children should be seen and not heard.
Yes.
Don't speak, don't cry, don't. I even got told, don't smile. If you smile, people will think you're weak. All this
Oh,
kind of nonsense,
wow.
and money
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah.
We don't talk about money. That money, I have no money. You should have no money, and you shouldn't want nice things. Imagine. So it took me years to unlearn all the nonsense. And
Wow.
even now, some of those family members still. I'm like, have you hurt yourself? Are you okay? That's
Right.
ridiculous. What you're
Yeah.
saying is ridiculous. But of course,
Wow.
like you said, Aldrima, at the time we don't know that.
Yeah.
It's just how we've been raised, and it's the environment. We see people suffering, and we think, well, that's the path for me.
Right.
And I'm actually saying no. I
Right.
say no more of that. Thank you very much. If I'm going to suffer, it's not going to be because of you
Right.
or any other
Exactly.
this nonsense. Yeah, I got to
Yeah.
suffer for something else, having a good time.
Yeah.
But no, but in answer to your question, it's come out more. So it's always been there. And like you say, the pandemic, what that did was just bring it to the surface.
Yeah.
It made us rethink, because even us in business, when our identity is attached to what we do, when you go to a dinner party or something, someone says, "Oh, what do you do?"
Yeah.
We think that the thing we do is us, and it's not. Um, it's you're not just a mother, you're not just a business owner, you're
Yes.
not just any of these things. So that
Yeah.
is why when we were locked down for all that time, we begin to question. Some of us were having existential crisis, and we start to think, who
Yes.
am I? oh my gosh, what have I got to show for my life? And
Yeah.
that's why you have this great resignation, because people are rethinking
Yes.
how they want to live their lives, and rightly so. We should always
Mhm.
take a audit of our
Yeah.
lives and see, are we keeping our goals? Do we have
Yeah.
any goals?
Yeah.
So that's what I saw. So people are still in denial, but people feel more free to talk about it now, and that's a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that brings me, that's a good segue into my next question. What are some things that people should do when, because we've talked about the challenges and some of the, things that, the symptoms and, all of that. So what are
Mm.
maybe like three things that when people find themselves in those type situations, what are some things that they can do, what are some things they can do about it before, even, I know one of the things they should do is come to you, okay?
Of course. I
But what are some
mean,
things that, what are some tips that you can provide for the listeners?
so there are a few. I mean, the first step to any issue that we're going through is acknowledgement, because even before you can accept it, you have to acknowledge, I have a difficulty in this area. It's those things that we don't tell anyone, and we want to, especially as business owners. So you're an overachiever.
Mhm.
There's certain things, and that's great on the surface, but is that coming from a place of trauma? What's that about? Why you keep work until 2 in the morning? What are you avoiding something? Just ask, be
Mm.
curious. It might be fine. Maybe it's just what you do, but ask yourself, because you'll know in yourself when something is not right,
Yeah.
and you'll know it usually before other people do. But so acknowledge it and seek help. And when I say seek help, from not just you have to go to the right places, you know. And I know some people, there's some on, you have to be careful with online stuff anyway, but whether
Yeah.
you can't go to your pastor or you have a trusted family member, talk it through first.
Yeah.
You might even just journal. When I didn't have anybody to talk to, that's what I had to do. And it's refreshing to look back over the years. And I was like, gosh, did I say that? Is that how I was really feeling? But it's just useful, because what it does is provide a blueprint for the next time. Because what's that saying? You're either in a crisis, or you're getting
Mm.
ready to go in a crisis, or you're
Right.
going through it. So it's
Yes.
gonna always come around. You're never,
Hmm.
yeah, you have your times where you're up on the roller coaster, and it's like, yes, but be mindful that there will be some challenges.
Yeah.
And like I say, for those of us on the entrepreneurial journey, is and that's what it is. It's no one told me. I didn't know. I thought, I'm going crazy. The highs and lows of emotion, like I
Yeah.
say, the isolation, because not everybody understands your vision when you're trying to
Right.
birth this thing. And
Yeah.
then you're all alone with it, and then you start to think, is it worth it? What am I doing here? You want to give up every other day, so you don't want to get out of bed. But yeah, it's just having, and that leads me on to the second point, having that safe community. You
Yeah.
provide some of those spaces,
Yeah.
Aldrima, which is excellent. Hence why, how long has it been? Nearly over 3 years anyway.
Yeah.
I've been coming, and I
Yeah.
never. That's how I know God's working on me, because I never, ever, ever would go to something like that. Be like, oh, there's just a bunch of women. These women just chatting,
Just
talking about business. I
cackling
ain't got no
women.
business. But
Yeah.
I've grown and I've
Yeah.
learned so much from all of you. And I tell you the truth, you guys, especially you and Dorothy, have been the most support, more than my own family. When I was
Mhm.
announced to even my friends I'm starting a business, they were like, yeah, yeah. So dismissive, but I have gained the
Mhm.
more support, even more support than some of the people in my own church. And that to me
Wow.
is amazing. So
Yeah.
divine connections, yeah, a prayer, by the way, certain
Yeah.
spiritual practices. So I know not everybody are people of faith.
Yeah.
So you might, whatever you do. So I pray. If you
Mhm.
can't pray, be mindful, mindful,
Mhm.
and you just want to quiet yourself. Like some people have CEO meetings with God. I think
Yes.
we should do that more
Yes.
regularly. Um,
Yeah.
sometimes we have to just become, we have to admit I don't have all the answers, and we just have to sit there and be still. It's just like when you're in the shower sometimes, or if you're walking in nature, sometimes those answers will come to you because
Absolutely.
you're in a different space, a different headspace, and you can think more clearly. So
Yeah.
that's definitely what you should, some of the things you should do. And more importantly, thirdly, I'd say everything comes back to boundaries.
Yeah.
Boundaries. You said before, Aldrima, that, obviously when you were in that caregiving role, you didn't know, and I didn't know. None of us know. We weren't taught. Very few of us, I think, were taught about boundaries. We don't even know our boundaries have been violated until somebody crosses us, and then you think, I don't like that, or I
Yeah.
don't like how you spoke to me, because maybe growing up, people used to talk to you all kinds of ways, or maybe physical violence was acceptable, or whatever it was, so that when you see these things, you normalize them, but it's not right. So we need to know, first of all, we need to know what our values are, because they are the driving forces for what we will and won't do. Those operate on a subconscious level. So know what those are, which will then help you determine what your boundaries are. Who can, even especially for business, can people call you all hours of the night? When do you accept clients? Who can come to your home? Can they come
Right.
anytime? Can people, just have those. So if you know what those are, you're less likely to be stressed out when people are making all kinds of demands, because guaranteed, as long as you're giving, there'll always
Yeah.
be someone who's taking. So
Yes.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
many more, but those are the main ones. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So asking, being a part of a community, prayer, get somewhere and be quiet.
Yeah.
you
Shut
know,
up.
yeah, yeah. And learn how to establish, good boundaries. And even if you don't, there's resources out there, Um, and you and I both love, the book Boundaries. I can't
Yes.
remember the author right
Henry
now.
Cloud.
Yes, Henry Cloud.
Yes.
I mean, great, book. I mean, it set me free, because I really had very poor boundaries. I thought that I had to be accessible to people, and that, that's how, I viewed myself as being value, as value to other people, being accessible, texting me, anytime they felt like it, but baby, when I became more aware of what that was doing to me, it was like, okay, no, we're not doing that. So yeah. So you came through, and this is my last few questions, and then we're gonna jump off. I know you got things you want to do, and go to the strip club and all that. No, I'm just
Don't tell them. Can you imagine? Listen, what kind of, I love that, by the way. I always say that in your group, and
I know.
I know I shouldn't. People probably find it a bit crass, and I'd be joking. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna join OnlyFans, because these
Yes.
bills. Sometimes I say that in church, and they're like, oh, Jezebel. But I love it. I love that reaction, because that
Yeah.
lets me know a few things about you. But yeah, it's cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know that you come through. I can't remember which decluttering challenge you joined. I know it was one of them. And you have heard me talk about, decluttering and things like that. So what are, some things that you were able to take away that you can implement, in your business, or either you implemented it or you thought, okay, well, that's pretty good. What were some things that you took away when you came through the challenge?
Oh, there's a few, but just even generally on a practical level, the when you organize your space, even before I came on here, and I'm thinking, Aldrima's not in your house. Why are you cleaning the house, going over it more? But we know that the environment, when we have a clear environment, and what have you, it helps my mind. It
Yeah.
helps me sleep better when there isn't clutter. And it's the same thing, mentally, because our environment impacts upon that. And also learning to delegate tasks,
Yeah.
is something I'm getting better at, that because as women, sometimes we think, oh, if you want a job doing, get it done yourself. But actually, we don't need to micromanage people. We don't need to, let people, give them some responsibility as well, whether that's
Mhm.
your kids in your home or your staff, and what have you. And then the other thing in terms of like, yeah, just I make a lot of like to-do lists and what have you. I like them, and I'm a pen and paper. I don't like all this tech, and I know
Digital
I need to
stuff,
be
yeah.
better with that. Yeah, I can see it there and I can feel it. I like tangible things. So
Hmm.
that's helped me in terms of organizing my physical space. But like I said, Aldrima, it has an impact on mental clarity.
Yeah,
That it declutters my mind, and
yeah,
therefore my overall well-being is better. So those were
yeah.
the main things that I kind of took away.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. So I know you have a podcast. Tell us about your podcast.
Okay, well, it's of course not as good as yours, but
Oh.
uh, stop it. But yeah, essentially, it's how long have I been running it? The last year. It's called Kintsugi Queens, so it's primarily for women, and it's just really about self-development and what have you. We discuss topics like self-acceptance. There's bits on business. Um, just my own reflections, well-being, all of those kind of things, aspects of faith. I mean, feel free to have a listen. But the concept of kintsugi, just for those who is thinking, why? Yeah, it's a Japanese term, and it's just basically about, in the pottery, if you have an object and it's broken, they put it back together with a golden kind of substance. So the item becomes new, it's repaired, and its value is more than it originally was. And that's just like us. So for those of us women who feel like, oh, I've had a hard life and I've been broken and I've been down and out, no, you can start a new chapter. You can rewrite your story because you are still worthy and you're still valuable. So that's why it's
Mm.
called Kintsugi Queens. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And we're definitely going to put all of that, in the show notes. What's the best way to reach you? Is it on the podcast or is your site? What is it?
I would say the podcast, because my website is under construction. But
Okay.
for those, feel free to come on the podcast, or I'm on LinkedIn, Maz Alexander. I don't so much use Facebook or Instagram, but if it's Maz Transformational Coaching. If you did want to find me there, so
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. We'll definitely put the links to that in the show notes. Well, Maz, I know I've been calling you Maz. I know it's Maz, but Maz sounds really
Yeah,
cool. So,
it's
and you've been okay with letting us call you Maz.
call me what you want. That's fine. Yeah,
And
it's
so,
it's the ones in the South. They say it differently, and I know like some of the like others, like some New Yorkers, they'll say it different. But I respond to most things. That's fine.
the topic itself cannot be covered in one podcast. So,
Mm.
but so I may have to have you back on for part two.
Yeah, if you behave yourself, of course.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll see. I'll try.
Yes.
Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show. So, those of you who are listening to this podcast, make sure that you connect with her. All of the information will be in the show notes. Um, Check out her Maz's podcast, connect with her on LinkedIn, and she's going to bless you for sure. So, with that said, we're going to say goodbye. Any last thoughts that you wanted to share, Maz, or what?
I just want to encourage everyone, please do not suffer in silence.
Mm,
Please do not, talk to somebody. You're not alone. That's
yeah.
it.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much. Start by listening and subscribing to the podcast. Simply go to organizedpreneurpodcast.com. And also check out the freebies available, including a free training at theorganizedpreneur.com. So you ready? Let's go.